Welcome friends, it is Sunday morning, so we're going to do another in our old cookbook series. And again today we're going to do the Five Roses Flour. And this copy was published in 1932. Now we've already done a recipe from this page, the peanut butter bread. And a lot of people said, I like the orange honey bread right below it. Can you make that? So, let's do it. First off, it says the rind of 2 oranges. Now, it doesn't say what kind of oranges, or how big the oranges should be. I know that when I was a kid, oranges only showed up just around Christmas time, and it was probably the same in the 1930s, if you got oranges at all. And they were probably navel oranges from Florida, where we lived. And if you lived in Western Canada, they would have been oranges from California. So I couldn't get navel oranges today. I've got these. I really like these Mineola Tangelos. They're a cross between a tangerine and a grapefruit. So technically not an orange at all. But I really like the flavor, and they're easier to peel than an orange. So I'm going to take the peel off. And now a lot of people will be worried about the pith. I would say don't be worried about the pith in this instance, because we're going to cook this for a very long time. We're essentially going to make a marmalade out of the orange peel. So, peel these up. And you're supposed to put them into a food chopper, but of course this is 2019, not 1938, and I don't have the food chopper that they would have had back in the day, so I'm going to use this food processor, and we're going to grind up these peels. Now it's said to use a coarse cutter on the food grinder, and I think I've got it to kind of a point that is coarse. So into a pot. And for those of you at home who get so upset when I make changes or substitutions, that's 2 changes and substitutions so far, probably in the first minute and a half of the video. Into this pot I'm going to put baking soda. And then it says to cover with water and cook for 30 minutes. So I'm going to bring this up to just about a simmer, not quite a boil, and we'll let this go for 30 minutes. Okay, now it says to drain and discard the water. So I'm not really sure why we're discarding the water. It probably might be good for something, but at the same time it might be too bitter after we've taken the bitterness out of the peel. So, peel goes back into the pot. Pot comes back over to the heat. We put in a 1/4 cup of water and then 1 cup of honey. Now this is my cousin Jill's honey, and for some reason it ended up in the fridge, so it's a little bit hard. But I'll get about a cup out. And we're going to cook this until essentially we've candied the peel, somewhere between a marmalade and candied peel. And I suppose you could completely skip this step and just get candied orange peel. It's readily available at any baking store, most grocery stores. Certainly I know here the Bulk Barn has it to spare. So, same medium-low heat, melt the honey in and just cook it until it's a fine syrup. While the orange is cooking, we're going to take about a cup of milk, and we're going to beat in 1 egg. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of the flour and I'm going to put that on top of the pecans. Coat them with flour. Now, this is somewhere between truth and an old wives' tale, that you always coat fruit and nuts before you put them into a cake so that they don't sink. I've sat down with several pastry chefs who have shown me that that's not the case. But I'm going to do it anyway because that's what is expected. But if you don't do it, don't feel bad that you haven't done it. It's not strictly necessary. So into this bowl I'm going to put flour, baking powder, and salt. And I'm just going to stir that together to get it well incorporated. The instructions say to sift it together. Everything now is pre-sifted. If you still want to sift because you think it gives you a lighter, more lofty cake, go right ahead. I don't take that extra step, and I know that some people yell at me for that, but I just don't think it's necessary today. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Now, I've got some baking soda, and I'm going to dissolve that in a little bit of water. Just a tiny little bit. The directions are to, in a few additions, mix the milk and egg into the flour. So we'll stir that in slowly, making sure it's fully incorporated. Last of the milk. Now we add in the orange peel. And the orange peel is cooled to kind of lukewarm, just above room temperature. So while we're mixing this in, I'm going to put in the water with the baking soda at the same time, just to make sure we get it mixed in. And you know what? I'm going to put the shortening in at the same time. And the last thing to go in are the nuts. Now I'm using pecans, but you could use pretty much any nut that you want, I imagine. It just says nutmeats. So that leaves you open to walnuts and anything like that. Now, the shortening, I actually used lard because I know at this time period, where we live anyway, pure pork lard was more readily available than vegetable shortening, and it would have been cheaper than vegetable shortening. And since pure pork lard is still on every grocery shelf in Canada, I decided to use that instead of vegetable shortening. Now it says to put it into bread pans, pans plural, and I'm not too sure about that. I mean, I think probably this is bigger than a bread pan would have been in the 1930s. So I'm going to start filling this one up and see what happens. One bread pan it is. I'm going to smooth out the top, and it says to leave it in a warm place for 20 minutes before baking. And I imagine that's for all of the baking soda and baking powder to activate and give it a bit of a loft before it goes into the oven. So let's check back when it's all cool and ready to go.
Snacks, snacks, snacks.
Yeah, so this was a request from our friends. It is, let me get the book open. So it's from the Five Roses Flour Cookbook.
Okay.
It is the orange honey bread. Yes, so we made the peanut butter bread on the same page, and people saw the orange honey bread and said you should do that. So, gave it a try.
Oh, the peanut butter was really good. So the citrus is quite light.
Yeah, it's just a hint of citrus, and it's not very sweet. So it's one of those quick breads that isn't terribly sweet. I think the orange, you could ramp up the orange a little bit, maybe?
Okay, context. As a reminder, oranges would have been super expensive and very special at this time. So I imagine this was a way to give everyone some orange.
Well, and to use the orange rind. Because you would have eaten the orange, and the oranges only would have come at that time just before Christmas. So this would have been very special. If I was updating this, there are a few things that I would do.
Well, you could increase the orange for sure.
I would probably make it a little bit sweeter. I would definitely make the orange peel sweeter when I was cooking it.
Understood.
But I think this is, it's an interesting bread.
I think I like it better than you do. I would toast that up.
Yeah.
And some butter.
I think I was just expecting something a little bit sweeter along the lines of a banana bread. And I knew that going into it when I looked at the recipe that it wasn't going to be sweet like that. So I was interested to find out what happens. But I would make it a little bit sweeter and I don't like sweet things. But I think I would. But overall, I think this is a great quick bread.
I bet you would also really like it with marmalade on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would really, the marmalade and the orange bread together.
Marmalade, or even a carrot marmalade. it would go
Yeah.
really well. Yeah. So, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.